All right, Dr. Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have you here.
Well, it's great to be with you, Mark.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different topic than we typically talk about on this channel. However, it's such an important topic, something that I'm super passionate about, which is my health. And I've been really trying to expand on what I'm talking about because, it's time. I've been saying it's time for people to look at freedom as an asset. It's time for people to look at health as an asset. And, I talk about money, but without health, you have nothing. And so I'm super excited to have you on today and dig in. I know in my own life, just to kind of put things into perspective, I've recently found myself getting injured. And that's held me back from a lot of things that I love. And I just, no amount of money I have in my life offsets that. So it's important. But I know that you are my friend who's a doctor, told me last night, I can't believe you have Dr. Joe on. He's like the godfather of naturopathic medicine, of course. So I know who you are, but why don't you fill us in a little bit on your career, what you focus on and what you're doing?
Yeah, I may not be familiar to many of your audience, but I'm a board certified family physician, and I've been passionate about health, just like you, for a long time. I've been also passionate about technology about the same time, since 1968. So that's 53 years. And that's when I took my first computer class, and really about when I started exercising. And I've been exercising ever since. I'm just passionate about it. And the key to staying injury-free is knowing how to exercise properly.
and not riding a dirt bike.
Oh yeah, that's another strategy. The risk to reward ratio for bike riding is just not there for me. So I've abandoned it a long time ago. Other the short trips to the beach.
Yeah.
As you might see in a video that we'll show at your event.
Yeah.
When CNN stalked me and followed me to the beach from my house. But I started in regular conventional medicine. I went to an osteopathic school, which is a little more aligned towards natural therapies. And kind of veered off in the mid 90s to embracing fully natural medical approaches. And along with my passion for tech, I started my website. I was a very early adopter. I started in 1997. This is before Google started their site. So I had my site up before theirs. I was one of the first people up on YouTube. Although we'll talk about censorship in a bit. They pulled my channel, all the thousands of videos I had up there over the years for no reason. Other than they made up a reason to justify it, but essentially no reason. So my passion is about that, and it's evolved. It's just really seeking to provide people with the truth, the honest truth about how to stay healthy and avoid the pitfalls, the landmines that are out there that are usually a result of this corporate greed where they're sacrificing human health and life for their bottom line profits, which is most egregiously represented by exactly what they've done with this in the last 2 years. Yeah. So, and I've been doing this for decades. I was one of the first people to warn of like dangerous drugs like Vioxx, which came out. I actually warned people in the last century, in 1999, before it was actually launched on the market, that it would kill people, and kill people. It did. Like 60,000 people died from the drug before Merck pulled it off. And they wound up getting about 25 billion in litigation against them, but they settled for much less. So that's what they do. Almost every one of these drug companies are criminal entities. They've had multiple billion-dollar lawsuits against them for injuring people. So, my job has been to inform people and educate them to simple, inexpensive alternatives that really can solve the fundamental cause of the problem, because drugs rarely, if ever, address the fundamental cause.
Hey, hold up just for a second. I want to tell you about something. I just got something cool in the mail I want to show you, and it is this new sleek package I just got with a brand new credit card. This isn't just any credit card. This is a BlockFi credit card that's powered by Visa, and it's backed by Bitcoin reward. So this is a Visa card. I can use it anywhere in the world that Visa is accepted, and the benefit of this BlockFi Visa card is that I get paid back in Bitcoin. Most of my other cards pay me in some sort of reward points. I get airline miles. I'm not very good at using those. They end up accumulating and I don't do anything with them. But getting to earn Bitcoin back with every single purchase is of course something that matters to me. Now, I know for a lot of people, they say that the price of Bitcoin is too high. So I say, well, you can always earn Bitcoin. You can get paid in Bitcoin, or you can just get cash back rewards on every purchase, paid in Bitcoin with the BlockFi Visa credit card, used everywhere that Visa is accepted. And if you want to sign up for the Visa card that pays back in Bitcoin from BlockFi, there is a link in the description down below. Check it out.
That is, that's a good point. It's, what I see the same thing happen in medicine that I see happen in the economy as well, which is you have a complex system. And in a complex system, you can't treat one thing without having other things happening. And so in medicine, it seems like to me, and you can let me know if I'm wrong here, but it seems like to me, the body is a complex system. And so if I have heartburn, sure, you can give me something for my heartburn, a prescription, but that would probably cause other problems when there's probably just a better natural option that I could get rid of the heartburn, right? And so by trying to treat that one symptom, I actually can cause more problems in my body.
And then more drugs that are recommended. I mean, as people age, it's so unusual to find someone in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that doesn't come in with a shopping bag full of drugs and medication prescribed to them.
Yeah. And we see the same thing in the economy where they're like, oh, well, let's fix this one thing. And then all of a sudden it triggers like, people are out of work. So why don't we pay them stimulus to stay home or, while they're out of work? But now we have shortages everywhere because nobody wants to go back to work, for example. And then that leads to more things where now people aren't getting supplies. And now the manufacturers can't process things. And anyway, it's a big mess. I'm curious, kind of like the financial system in medicine. It seems like my sister, she's an ER doctor. And when she got out of med school, she came home to the family and she's like, stop taking your vitamins and forget your immune system. That's ridiculous. And you just need to take pharmaceuticals. And over the years, somehow she was able to kind of shed that. And now she starts to understand it differently. But it seems like you're in medical school, you're kind of just taught one thing. And for most people, they probably are never able to see their way out of that. And then now you go into like this, I don't know if what you would consider it like functional medicine or naturopathic medicine, but how does that process work?
Naturopathic is a very specific type of medicine. And actually it's a certification. They have specific schools and licenses. Okay. So the type of medicine that's more broad that I ascribe to is natural medicine. But it's sometimes called integrative medicine, but I like natural medicine. So in your sister's emergency medicine is one of the few legitimate justifications for the conventional medical system, because that's what is designed for: acute trauma, emergency care. Not always used for that, but that's the best application of conventional medicine. So it's easy to get confused. But the whole game changed about 110 years ago when Rockefeller, it gets back to the finances, Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie put together the Flexner report in 1910, which essentially eliminated almost every single form of natural medicine because it was a competitor to what then were the emerging class of pharmaceuticals, primarily derived from oil, petroleum products that Rockefeller was behind. So they essentially booted everything out. Doctors lost their licenses and they really started to control the curriculum. So at that point, so you're right, it is not taught in medical school. There's virtually nothing addressing natural approaches. It's almost all pharmaceutically based. And I've been through 4 years of medical school and 3 years of residency training. So I can tell you that with confidence.
Yeah. So then I see the same thing in the financial system. Like you go through economics classes and then you get a job working for a financial firm. And then you're just kind of a salesperson, just selling the products they have. And it's really hard for you to kind of untrain yourself and start looking for those solutions. So there's not a lot of people.
Harder because if you violate that process, then you're criticized and you're really challenged that they can reprimand your license or even take it away if you really go too far out of the system.
Yeah. Which without going too deep into what's going on today, I mean, I see reports left and right coming out almost every day about reprimanding doctors for going outside of the line. And it seems like, so going back to my personal injury, I got injured on my dirt bike. I hurt my hip. Dislocated it
from a fall, a serious fall.
From a fall, yeah. I crashed. I crashed on my dirt bike, and I dislocated it, and it hurts, right? It hurts, and so go to my doctor, and he's like, well, based off your age And based off your activity level, these are your options. But because of your age, I don't know if a hip replacement's right for you because of this and this.
Let's jump to surgery.
Well, I mean, I tore the labrum in several places, and I dented the bone. My femur jammed so hard, I dented it and put a flat spot in. Anyway, but my point is that he's like, look, based off of you, your age, your activity level, these are options, but you need to consider this because of your age. You need to consider this. If we do this, the risks are here. But if we do this, the risks are here. What do you think is best? So he gave me a custom solutions based off of me, my age, and then allowed me to choose what I thought was the best. And it seems like that's the way medicine has always been done, but that's rapidly changing.
Well, it's uncommon. What you're describing is definitely not typical in my experience.
Oh, really?
But you were able to find a good clinician. So kudos to that. What did you wind up doing?
Well, so I ended up just having, we did orthoscopic surgery, which just cleaned out some cartilage. They cut the scar tissue and restitched it up. And there was a little bone spur. And I had that done orthoscopically about 6 months ago, but it hasn't really gotten better. So yeah,
so that's a classic illustration, because you have to understand that one of the fundamental foundational principles of health is that your body wants to stay healthy. If you give it what it needs, it's going to move towards health and stay away from disease. And you're a pretty healthy guy. You have very healthy practices. So you just need a little push in the right direction. And there's some really powerful interventions that can stimulate healing, like PEMF would be one, pulse electrical magnetic frequencies, and certain types of vibrational therapies that can increase the blood flow, lower the inflammation, and cause your body and its intuitive wisdom to really identify what is incorrect and needs to be regenerated to move in that direction. And it's just shocking how, when you apply these foundational simple strategies, how you can almost always recover and repair without any type of surgery, unless it's if you smashed your pelvis and you had to put the bones back together or something, that's clearly an indication for emergency orthopedic surgery. But it's uncommon for the chronic nagging pains where you need surgery.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, you almost always you can find a safer solution that doesn't involve a surgical intervention.
Yeah. And I'm certainly for that. So going back, so I remember what you're talking about 100 years ago, as you said, right, the medical system kind of split. And it seemed like the chiropractors have kind of hung on to more of the natural kind of stuff. But then all the doctors.
There's a fair percentage, but a lot of them just do crack your bones. But some of the brightest practitioners out there are chiropractors. I mean, the innovators in medicine, some of the things they've come up with are just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But that's a small subset actually of them, in my experience.
Yeah. But then today we have everything's kind of gone into the pharmaceutical path, which is then just prescribe it. One of my friends in the Bitcoin space, Safety Amos, he wrote the book. Bitcoin
you know him well. Yeah, I love that guy. I've read both. I haven't read the Fiat Standard yet, but.
Yeah. So he talks about fiat money, fiat food, and how the fiat money system has actually corrupted everything, including our food system, because everyone's kind of shortcutting, to make more money. And I guess even fiat medical as well. It kind of works the same way. But it seems like today, on top of the bad information we've been getting from our traditional doctors, and maybe it's not their fault, they were just trained wrong. But we're also having massive problems with our food. And so maybe our body doesn't even get the nutrients it needs to be in a state that it can heal itself.
Yeah, the food is a big issue. And, especially now, and I've been studying food's impact on health for decades. And, it's amazing, Mark. The more you study this, the more you begin to understand and realize that it really is pretty simple. It's not that complex. And it's real. And most of the problem results from the perversion in the processing of the food. And one of the biggest issues in my experience, and I'm convinced is the most significant, dangerous metabolic poison you could possibly eat. And this may come as somewhat of a surprise, but not to many people, but the devil's in the details and how you apply this is vegetable or seed oils.
Sure.
That there is nothing more dangerous nothing more destructive to your body in producing heart disease, cancer, blindness due to aging, diabetes, obesity, dementia, I mean, that is something you almost have to entirely eliminate. And so the obvious seed oils you don't want to put in your diet, but it's hidden. It's hidden in almost every processed food. Anytime you go to a restaurant, you're going to get a huge dose, especially salad dressings or sauces. It's all in there. And you'll be shocked to find the biggest source of seed oils in the American diet. I'll let you take a guess and see if you can get it. The biggest source for most people.
Well, I would have guessed salad dressing because I think of a lot of oil in there.
Yeah, it's up there, but it's not as high as this other source. Okay, I'll tell you, it's chicken.
What?
Chicken. I know, chicken. Shocking, right?
Why chicken?
Because I'm an animal-based guy, much more than a vegetarian guy, and the majority of my animal protein comes from animal sources. But the chicken is something, and pork, for similar reasons, should be avoided. It's because these are animals that are given perverted feed. They essentially give them grains, and the grains are loaded with this dangerous omega-6 fat that comprises most of the seed oils, which is linoleic acid. And you get really high concentrations, maybe 25, 30%. So because people eat so much chicken, so it's so inexpensive and it's perceived as a health food, they get most of the linoleic acid from that. And then even other perceived healthy oils like olive oil or avocado oil, most of them, 80% or more, are adulterated. They're diluted with these seed oils like safflower or sunflower oil. And because it's a lot more, you would make a lot of money. And 60 Minutes even did a big expose on this, and the mafia.
So then coconut oil.
Well, the best, that's one. It's a vegetable oil too, but you're right. There's virtually no linoleic acid in there. But probably better option would be beef tallow or beef fat or butter. And almost any processed food is loaded with this stuff, and includes cakes and pastries and things. But that doesn't mean you can't ever eat those. If you're going to make them yourself or pay someone to make it with butter instead of vegetable oil, then it's going to be great. There's nothing wrong with butter.
And it tastes
unless you have a really severe dairy allergy, of course.
Yeah.
But it's a far preferred fat source. In fact, I have 14 chickens, and I raise them. I actually customize their food, and I give them about a half a pound of butter every day and put it under their mung bean sprouts, organic mung bean sprouts. I give them about a gallon of that.
So about 7 years ago, I started doing bulletproof coffee. I know you were just recently with Dave Asprey.
Yeah, I just actually talked to him this morning. We meet once a week, so he's a good friend.
So I started doing intermittent fasting every day, 18-hour fast or more. I haven't even eaten today yet, and it's already almost 5:30 where I'm at.
It's too late. You got to just skip it.
Well, I'll have dinner.
I'm just kidding.
I'll have dinner when we're done. But and I make my coffee, and I put 2 tablespoons of butter in there. I put a couple of tablespoons of MCT oil, and it's been over 7 years now. And I have my blood panel done twice a year, and my cholesterol levels are good. And so the butter itself, and a lot of steak, all red meat, bacon when I can get it, lots of avocado.
Just limit the bacon because that's pork. Unless you can find someone that they're not giving those hogs any grains.
So it really comes down to then what those animals are eating.
100%. It makes perfect sense, shouldn't it?
You can't
eat
junk
they're
and
eating,
then have
you're going to
meat.
get.
Yeah.
And herbivores like cattle or cows or bison or lamb or sheep, they have a different pathway. So they have multiple stomachs, and they digest those foods differently, and they're not eating grains. You can feed them grain. You can obviously get grain finished beef, but even if they finish the beef on grain, they're still not going to have as much linoleic acid as a chicken or a hog.
Okay. Yeah. We found a place here in Puerto Rico that we get some grass-fed beef from, and we've been eating that mostly. And it's a little different, the textures.
Just make sure it's grass finished too, because that's a common mistake. It's actually the biggest mistake in Whole Foods. They advertise it as grass fed, but it's the grass finished that you want, because or pasture raised. I think that's what they use at Whole Foods. I was just watching a video, and they claim it's pasture raised, and it's true, but they don't tell you that the last 3 months they're eating grains.
So I want to jump into a couple other topics. One, I want to talk about censorship because this is a big topic that you've been under fire from, and it's a big topic that I'm passionate about because I'm really trying to increase everybody's freedom, and health is part of that. So I want to talk about that. Now, real quick, I do want to plug that I am having a live event coming up in Miami, and I want to help people learn how to build more wealth grow more wealth, keep their assets, but also their health, their freedom. And of course, you, Dr. Mercola, are going to come speak. And so everybody should check that out. There's going to be a link down below. But before we jump into the censorship issue, just give us, this may not be so easy, but give us some easy practical tips that most people could do to increase their health, especially given where we're at today with our food quality going down and all the other factors that we have. And I know, what the 80-20 rule, what are the 20%?
I already gave you, I perceive, one of the most important rules.
So the vegetable, the seed oil.
But I can continue on that, or I can go into the censorship to give you to answer that question, because there's two different questions.
So if we just work at eliminating seed oil, that's probably one of the biggest needle movers that we can do.
That is probably the biggest in my viewpoint. And the single biggest intervention you can use to radically reduce your risk for every single major cause of chronic disease: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia, obesity. That's the biggest mover. So, yeah. And then the intermittent fasting is another powerful intervention, although technically what you're describing is, it's a form of intermittent fasting, but it's time restricted eating. But that coffee you're having in the morning is a source of calories, so that qualifies as a meal. You're getting about 400 calories depending on how much MCT and butter you're using.
Yeah. So I've had this conversation with a lot of people. The way that I understood it, and correct me, because I know you know Dave Asprey and you know more than I do.
Well, I actually wrote a book on it too. It's called Fat for Fuel. So it was a pretty
so you did it. So
it was the number one book sold in America the week it was out.
So I know there's like fast mimicking diets, things like that.
Yeah, that's Walter Longo's work.
Longo's work. And so I thought
with a V.
I thought since there was no protein or carbs, then the body can maintain its fasting state.
Well, the majority of the benefits as a result of its fasting state can be achieved. And that really is suppression of this important metabolic vector called mTOR, mammalian targeted rapamycin. So you're right. If you don't have protein or carbs, you're not as likely to activate mTOR. So you'll keep that low, but it's still not fasting technically, because you are not fasting if you're eating calories. Now, it's not a big bump, and you're probably getting most of the benefits. And that's what Dave does too. He's been to my house before, so he has the coffee in the morning. I've made it for him in the past, and will
that prevent my body from going into autophagy?
No, it's when you activate autophagy that's the trigger for stopping autophagy. And autophagy is a very powerful mechanism.
Right. So I'm asking, if I drink the bulletproof coffee, does that prevent?
Probably will cut it down a bit, but not significantly. But it is a cut. It's not the same as total fasting. So typically, time restricted eating is defined as no calories in a 6 or 8 hour window. All your calories are in a 6 or 8 hour window.
Right.
So you're essentially what you're doing, and you've got two very small. You got one small window a day you're eating. You're almost an OMAD. Today you'll be a NOMAD, which is 1 meal a day.
Right.
Which I don't recommend for most people because it's too restrictive, especially as you get older. You really don't want. I would not go below a 6 hour day window.
I don't normally. It's just today was a very busy day. But also sometimes when I'm traveling. Sometimes when I'm traveling, I eat breakfast too, so I like to mix it up a little bit.
That is perfect. Listen to your body, honor your schedule. And that's what you want. You don't want it. You want to get into a cycle that is congruent with your rhythm. So you don't want to go into some preconceived idea of what your body needs, but you definitely want to switch it up. And that's or cyclical. It's like cyclical ketogenesis. Yeah.
Now, just for everybody listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, autophagy is correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to try to summarize this, and maybe I'll butcher it. But autophagy is a point where your body goes into a state that it starts to kind of kill off and get rid of the old cells that are kind of broken down, straggling, and then I think it almost makes the cells like shed their layer and get rehardened and strong again. And
no. It actually targets them.
I should have asked you then.
Yeah, metabolically, it tags them, and then you have cells within your body which see this tag and self-destruct them, like lysosomes and such. And once they're down, then it also activates a signal to repair and regenerate. So you generate new cells, and it kind of depends on the cells. And there's another interesting strategy, which is a high level, and many of your viewers are probably ready for this. But if you're overweight, and you're still taking a lot of vegetable oil, you better start there first. But there's something aligned with this, which is sauna. So if you can regular sauna is a powerful intervention. And the studies done in Finland show the dry saunas, they decrease mortality like 40-50%. And part of the reason they do that, they generate something called a heat shock protein. And the heat shock proteins are exactly what you described. They take autophagy to the next level because they also do a process called refolding. When your body makes proteins from scratch, de novo, and right off the bat, 30% of them are misfolded. And when they're not folded correctly, because it's this complex three-dimensional structure, if it's not folded perfectly, it will not work. That's just the way the deal works. So you have to refold. You have to have a system that allows it to repair that and refold it. So the heat shock proteins do that. And if it's too damaged, it will target it for destruction, just like autophagy. So powerful intervention. Plus, if you have an infection coming down, you're typically a good sauna, you're going to raise your body temperature, core body temperature by 6 to 7 degrees. Like when I go on my sauna, my temperature is 97.3, and when I come out, it's like 104.5. Wow. So and that's exactly what your body does when you're sick. You get a fever, right? Why does your body have a fever? Because these pathogens do not like elevated temperatures. So it's a powerful intervention. And you could do it every day, but probably it's like like what you're doing with the time restricted eating. You want to cycle it. So some of the Finns do it every day, but I think there's some problems because you sweat so much. If you're in a good sauna, you're going to sweat a quart and a half, maybe a half a gallon of water.
Wow.
Depending on how long you're in there. So along with, the other benefit of sauna is it removes the toxins from your body. It's one of the most effective ways to remove toxins. Nothing comes close to it, especially if you combine it with some binders. But it's such a powerful strategy to stay healthy, which is one of your initial questions. So an advanced strategy for sure.
So limit seed oils, think about some fasting to trigger autophagy.
Well, time restricted eating,
like I do.
6 to 8 hour window. Yeah.
And it's much easier than you think. But
if you're over 12 hours, just do it slowly. You don't jump to 6, you go to 11 and a half, 11, 10 and a half, right. 10, just do it slowly and you adapt to it and it'll be real easy.
Yeah. And then if you can find a sauna, sometimes jump in the sauna as well. One more question about this before we kind of move on. Also, I've heard now, I've done some IV therapy, different minerals, things like that. Mm-hmm. And they have one that I recently found out about. I forget if it's called like NAV or something like that.
I've studied NAD very deeply. I've read hundreds and hundreds of the papers, and I'm really, really one of the experts in it to help translate that literature. So I've got some really good news for you. It is a very important biomolecule, not as important as I previously thought it was. And I've interacted with David Sinclair. In fact, I was just with him at an event in Boston a few weeks ago, and he's really the primary person or researcher that brought this to attention, because we'd known about NAD since 1908 or 05. Sir Arthur Hayden first discovered it. And if you ever have taken biochemistry, it's essential for the electron transport chain. It transfers electrons through in the citric acid cycle so that you can create ATP. But Sinclair in his lab at MIT in the late 90s figured out that it's also a fuel for the sirtuins, and sirtuins are longevity proteins. So that's what helped it gain prominence. And there's been a lot of talk about it. A lot of people are taking NAD precursors. I don't know if you are. Are you taking them?
No.
Okay, good. Well, don't. Especially you. They're useful because you have a dramatic decline in NAD as you age. But what I've learned, and even I confronted Sinclair with this at a meeting in Boston recently, but there's a specific enzyme that is responsible for salvaging your NAD, because once it's broken down, it goes to nicotinamide. And you have this enzyme called NAMPT, and that's responsible for catalyzing. It's the bottleneck. This is the enzyme that is the rate limiting factor for you recycling your NAD, because 99% of it gets recycled. So this enzyme becomes weakened and damaged and doesn't work as effectively as you get older. But there's one simple intervention that will make it 10 to 30 times more effective than any NAD precursor. And do you know what that intervention is? You're going to love it because you do it.
Fasting.
No, fasting. Oh. Actually, fasting will increase it. You are correct. Fasting increases NAD, but not as much as this other intervention. You're totally right. It does increase. But usually it's a few day fasting. You're not going to do that type of fasting regularly, but you will increase NAD levels when you fast. No question.
Okay. So what is it?
Exercise. But intense exercise, especially like resistance training. And when you combine it with blood flow restriction, oh my gosh, your NAD levels go through the roof, 30 times higher. Because you're activating this enzyme in the MPT. So,
when I was reading the benefits of that IV bag, the NAD, it sounded like it was almost kind of putting your body into this autophagy thing. Is it somewhat the same, or are they totally different?
no, it's different. I mean, if you've had that, that's an expensive intervention. Typically, especially a liter, a gram or so of NAD is about $1,000. It's administered over about a few hours. So, I mean, it's useful, it's helpful especially for people with certain drug dependencies. But I think there's a easier, less expensive, simpler intervention. See, just like conventional medicine does, and they have these expensive approaches that do relieve symptoms. Natural medicine has the same thing. They have a lot of expensive interventions that aren't necessary. There's a lot simpler, less expensive strategies to achieve the same result.
I just wanted to take a second to explain to you one more time just how cool having this new BlockFi Visa credit card is. I've started to move a lot of my bills over to get paid from this. Of course, all my business supplies, I'm starting to pay for this, my advertising budgets, and I'm starting to run as much as I can through it because I'm getting paid a percentage back of every single transaction in Bitcoin. We want to save in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is an asset that goes up in value because of the deflationary nature of it. And we want to spend our fiat. So I'm spending my fiat through my BlockFi Visa card, and I'm getting back Bitcoin that I can save and I can hold. I expect it to go up in value a lot. I expect to hold my Bitcoin. I'm gonna pass it to my kids and my grandkids, and hopefully my great grandkids will have my Bitcoin one day. So I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna spend my fiat through this card, and I'm gonna earn back Bitcoin that I'm gonna save. If you wanna get one, there's a link down below.
Okay. So that's enough of the geek talk that probably most people aren't into. Moving on to something else that is probably more important and more near and dear to everybody's heart is the topic of censorship, and specifically around information, but especially specifically around medical information. A couple of things. So I retweeted a thing yesterday, and it was about Google now says they're going to ban everything or stop sending traffic to things that go against scientific consensus. And I've also seen other things that also talk about shutting down doctors who go against consensus. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, well, first of all, science isn't fact, right? Science is always
it's more consensus,
right? And but if the Wright brothers would have listened to the consensus, man never would have flown. Mm-hmm. Right. They had to, everybody told them it was never going to be possible, but yet they went out and made a plane and they flew. And so like, if we're required, if consensus now is fact, then we can never go against that. I mean, what is that going to do to society or progress?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's your definition of consensus too. It's who are you relying on to gather the data? And are you suppressing or censoring other participation in this discussion and dialogue, which is precisely what's occurring now. So, interestingly, many of your readers may not know that I was identified in late July as the #1 source of misinformation in the United States, in the world, about the what we're going through now. And because they identified 12 of us, the misinformation dozen we were called. And supposedly there was a dark money group called called CCDH, which is funded by Arabella Advisors, only spun up a year and a half ago. And they came up with this statistic that this 12 people were responsible for two-thirds, Mark, of all the misinformation on Facebook and social media. And when Facebook did their analysis, they said it was less than 1%. Less than 1%. So they weren't, and none of this is a major leading front page article on the New York Times, spread by almost all the major media in the U.S. And so I was like vilified. And then CNN had to get in. They did a 7-minute expose on me. They essentially I guess I forget that word. They stalked me at my office and my home, and finally found me at at the beach I go to walk on every day. So it was interesting. So anyway, that's been the challenge. And just recently, I think last week, we've never had any strikes against us this year because we don't post anything on YouTube that violates the policy because we know what the rules are. They'll just take us out. So they decided to change the rules in the morning. They said, if you've ever put anything down on vaccines, we're going to move your site. So they took me and Bobby Kennedy out. Actually, I'm friends with Bobby too. He wrote the foreword to my book. Oh, it was interesting. And when CNN did their expose on, they said, he's got a book. It was #1 on Amazon, but we're not going to tell you the name of it. So that all that exposure made the book #1 for like almost a week. So we radically increased sales
I remember. So there's a saying that says you can ripping out a man's tongue does not prove him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I believe that good ideas win because they're good ideas. They're better. And I believe that through free speech, we would find the truth. I suppose if I want to, in a debate, I should know my opponent's argument better than they do. And so I suppose that there's some truth about, disinformation, purposeful lies could be harmful, dangerous,
Sure.
I suppose. But I guess the problem is who gets to decide what's disinformation?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you say about that?
That's exactly the crux of the issue. You've got these people who've determined themselves to be the self-appointed authorities, many of which have no experience in this area. Like you've got Fauci, who's a sociopathic criminal. And I know that sounds harsh, but if you read Bobby Kennedy's new book, The Truth About Tony Fauci, which comes out in November, I think you would not dispute that in any way.
Well, we know even just Rand Paul has come out with all the evidence that
Rand
shows
Paul's
he's
a good
been going
illustration
against the U.S. government. And
he just blasted the head of the Health and Human Services last week, and it just crippled him. I mean, both of these guys, they have no clinical experience. This guy, the head of Health and Human Services, who's like vilifying all these people going against these narratives, he doesn't even have a science degree. He has no professional qualifications to come to these judgments. Not that you need that, but he's making wrong decisions and he's spreading misinformation. But the crux of it is that you have people like this who are essentially the arbiters of what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, how would you think of balancing that? Like I said, for me, I'm for free speech. Could people say things that are potentially harmful? Maybe, but I think through discovery, we would find out who those people are, and it would be better to know. But at the same time, I guess I could see the argument that maybe that misinformation is bad. Do you think it's best just to let it be out there, let people debate it?
There's not a micro doubt in my mind that you should not be censoring it unless it's actually. I mean, there's few. I mean, it's like the pedophilia or something really outrageous where people are being harmed and absolutely.
So there's a few things that we could all agree.
Yeah, but that everyone agrees on. That has been time honored and it's nothing new. But once you go out that, I think no matter how much you disagree with that thought, concept, or speech, it should be left out there because the public will figure it out. The public is the crowd is smarter than the few. There's no question. Consistently, almost every research study shows this. They eventually figure it out. Yeah,
there's been numerous examples of that, like at a state fair, like guess the weight of the bull,
sure,
and everybody puts a guess in, and when they take the crowd and they average it out, they can get almost exactly how many jelly beans in a jar, et cetera. And so, to your point, the crowd is crowdsourced information can be powerful. Now, you have been doing this for a really long time. You've written many books. You rub shoulders with, you're friends with some of the brightest people in the space. You're an expert. I would consider you an expert. You've been doing this, I think, for 25 years. Now, recently, you came out publicly saying that you had to delete 25 years, I believe you said 25 years of your files, and you had to remove them all. And now you've changed the way that you send out information, where now it's like time stamped and this and that. And I remember seeing that, and I think I tweeted it out, and that's where I kind of used that quote about you can rip out a man's tongue. But I don't know why you deleted 25. I imagine you came under some heavy pressure. But couldn't you have just moved those somewhere else?
Oh, sure, we could have, but it was a very calculated response. This occurred right when that CNN video came out in the New York Times exposure, and I was pretty much in the news big time at the end of July and early August. So I created a video which explains this, but the crux of it is that we, as a result of that media exposure, it was good for us, but there's a lot of people who are not psychologically there. So we had a lot of threats, very serious threats against me personally, against my business. So we had to address that, and we felt this was the most effective way to do that, and that would take some of the pressure off of us. So we removed 25 years, so over 15,000 articles we removed from the site. They're not deleted; they're still available. They're not gone. We didn't burn them. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So we're probably going to bring them back early next year in a different format that provides us like a membership association that's really inexpensive, that provides different levels of protection that aren't available in a free site. So probably on a Substack it's going to be. So we'll have almost everything back, and that it will be the case. So, but we just had to take the pressure off of us because we were there were articles being written in some of the most scientific, prestigious publications in the world, like Science and Nature, that were calling for cyber terrorism threats against me.
Wow. One thing I learned from my new, my longtime mentor and now my friend, Robert Kiyosaki,
mm-hmm.
He was teaching the game Cash Flow down in Australia before the game was out, and they had these investment clubs, and they're teaching the game, and they became under heavy attack from some news organizations saying they were running some cult and this and that, and so they decided to make the game, and then he wrote the book, and he told me, he said, you have to have an artifact. So the book is like an artifact, and the game is an artifact, and like, nobody can say the game is something other than what the game shows. So thinking about it like that, I would almost think like people could make up all kinds of accusations against you, but the proof was there. All the documents were there, and they could say it, but the reality is anybody could go read it and find out it wasn't true. So removing it almost could make it worse.
Well, see, there's another issue is that they change laws all the time. Just as I explained previously, we wake up one morning and all of a sudden YouTube's changed its policy and my site is banned. My channel, I'm deplatformed just because they changed the rules. Same thing. When you've got 15,000 articles up over 25 years, it's like a quarter of a century of content, right? We go back and relook at those articles every week. Obviously they're just up there. So another concern was that they're going to change the law or something. They're going to extract this old article because our site's not even up on archive.org. It's gone from there too. So they can't use any of that against us for any federal, anything they want to do to destroy us. Because believe me, I'm a credible threat to them. At least they perceive it. That's not my subjective impression. Otherwise, why would they do this? They're targeting me almost pretty specifically, Bobby Kennedy too. But that's pretty much it. They're trying to vilify me, and to a certain measure, they've been successful. There are a large number of people, because if you look at me Google took me out of their search engine 2 years ago. So, you can't find anything but bad information about me because they control the search engine. And that's Google is a perniciously evil organization. I shouldn't use evil, but they're really behind a bunch of this because 93% of the searches in the world are done on this search engine. Right. And they manipulate the information you're going to get. So, a good percentage of it is solid information, like on how to kill certain pests in your garden or something. There's no reason to censor that or manipulate it. But for some of these other social issues, there's a huge percentage. And they've been shown. I've interviewed Robert Epstein, who's a sociologist at Harvard. And, he's done studies showing how they manipulated elections, and 25% of elections in the world, they manipulate through their search results. So they are part of the reason why this is the most effective brainwashing propaganda campaign in the history of mankind. Largely as a result of Google. It's some of the other social media platforms too, but Google is the biggest criminal. Yeah,
it's interesting. You said don't use that word against Google, but in their values or their motto.
Well, that was the original ones. Yeah. They abandoned that, I think, over a decade ago.
Yeah, they abandoned it. So the problem is, when I'm talking to people and they say, well, all the scientists agree that this is happening, or all the doctors agree this is happening. But the reality is, no, that's not the case. And actually, lots of scientists have come out and said it's not, or lots of doctors have come out and said this. I've seen, now there's like, 9,000 signatures that these doctors have come out and said this or whatever. But because it's being censored, then the people aren't able to see that. And I'm guessing it's just really difficult for the average person. I think the problem used to be getting information. Today, the problem is maybe too much information. So how do you discern it? And then even now, more importantly, if one side is kind of being erased. So it's a complex issue. I get it. But I guess what can the average person do to, one, be able to discern the information better and then find the right information?
It's a great question. And I'm not sure that I have the authoritative answer, but I can offer some suggestions with respect to my experience has been, and that is to identify people who you believe who are experts in the field and follow what they're doing. Many times it's not going to be on a typical social media platform. Many of these accounts are banned on Facebook and Twitter and even YouTube. So you have to really go to their site. And there are, I'm sure you're familiar with something called RSS feeds, which makes it a bit easier. Yep. So you can collect all of this and one information in one sec. But I think it's important to understand that you really cannot trust almost any search engine, even the non-Google search engines, because they have developed the most effective and sophisticated search engine tool that ever existed. And almost every other alternative search engine uses Google as its search data structure. Yeah. So there's no alternative. And it would cost billions, hundreds of billions to create an alternative. I
use DuckDuckGo.
That uses Google.
Yeah. But it does get different results than Google sometimes.
The benefit of that is that the primary benefit is that most of these other search engines don't destroy your privacy like Google does.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing I would add on to that is just, I like to say on my videos, almost everything you've learned is wrong. And so always approaching things from maybe what we'd call first principles and really taking things more basic. And so kind of what we started out talking about, which you said, which is if you give your body what it needs and you put it into a situation, it can take care of itself. It can heal itself, which is almost kind of like flat earthers, I guess, today. But I start from there. And so then right off the bat, do you need to be adding more things into your body, right? I think that's probably a good place to start. So anybody that defaults to that naturally, you might probably question that.
But still, it's important to understand when you're trying to find another viewpoint that the typical gateway into doing that is YouTube and Google search engines. There's no other way around it. So you have to find alternative strategies. And that's the challenge. That's the absolute challenge. So it requires an updated, more sophisticated approach than we could have used 5 years ago. 5 years ago, that would have went perfectly because Google wasn't censored, but it is now.
Yeah. Good point. And then I always just ask myself when I'm evaluating any piece of information, and because of the videos that I make, people send me all kinds of stuff, and a lot of it's very sensational, and I don't just go share it. And so a lot of times I'll look at it and go, is this true? And so sometimes this bias makes me think everything is a conspiracy. But one of the first questions I would just typically ask is who's benefiting from this?
That's a good start. Good start.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, so it's a tough world. I think that you gave us some good information. One, cut out seed oils, do some time eating, and that can
time-restricted eating. Exercise, honor your circadian rhythm. And with the caveat with time-restricted eating is to seek to have your last meal at least 3 hours before bedtime, because there's a special type of regeneration that occurs, activated autophagy, that is impaired if you eat right before you go to bed.
Great point. And then we talked about censorship and just the importance of looking at the information that you get it from trusted sources that you've gathered, friends that are like-minded maybe suggest, and just try not to trust everything that you see on Google or YouTube. One more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll probably wrap this up because I know we've gone a long time, but another big thing that is super important to me, and they say you don't know what you have until it's gone. So we this year moved from California to Puerto Rico, and for the first 6-7 months, we didn't meet anybody. And like lacking a community around me of like-minded people was so difficult. And I just, you don't know what you have till it's gone. And so now I have this like new understanding of the importance of having a community around you, which is one reason why I'm having this live event. I want everyone to come and kind of meet new people that are like them and build some relationships and friendships. And so that's important. Speak to the power of a community and being around like-minded people that have healthy habits. And,
there's no question. I'm convinced that, the country isn't heading towards good state. I think things are getting worse and worse every week. So, eventually things will devolve. So there's got to be, in my view, there's got to be a group of people who understand the truth, who are really aligned with this is not brainwashed by the propaganda, that can sort of rescue things when things collapse. So that's my approach. And it's 100%. There is no Lone Ranger who's going to fix this thing. You're going to need a group of really, really bright people to support each other and provide the resources you need to sustain and develop the creativity to find a solution.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I do believe that there's massive hope and prosperity. I believe we get through this and it's better. But the next couple of years are going to be difficult, and trying to do it on your own is going to be very difficult. And so having that community, that support system around you is going to be important. I had to learn the hard way. And so I'm working to build that back up. And so anyway, come to the live event, hear Dr. Joe Mercola speak, hear me speak.
Should be fun.
Friends. And build a community around you. We'll put a link down below. Since you've been pretty much eliminated out of Google, is there anywhere that we should go find you directly to your website?
I have a website. It's my last name, Mercola, MERCOLA.com. We have 4 articles that are live because they disappear after 48 hours. So it's a newsletter's free and really is pretty cutting edge. We call the best, most recent information out there. And I do interviews with some of the brightest, sharpest people out there, at least once or twice a week. So it's a free, great resource, Mercola.com. So
great. All right. Well, we're going to have all that linked down below. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.